I want to make a video and a video series about self-defense for people who don't know how to fight, hence the title. But you saw me on the heavy bag a second ago, here's me on the Makiwara. And the point, as you can imagine, is I think everyone should learn how to defend themselves. It's an essential life skill. I always compare it to learning how to swim. You don't learn how to swim necessarily so that you can have fun at a pool party or so you can go a little bit deeper into the beach than you would have otherwise. No, you do it so that you can save your life if the need arises. And if the need does arise and you have never trained for that situation, well, that's not a good place to be. But let's be honest, training is not a guarantee of success in a self-defense situation. I trained my body, this was last year, I'm not in this kind of shape anymore, but it was my second degree black belt test. I trained with weapons, bendy sticks, straight sticks. I practice with them on various types of terrain purposefully. I don't just do set routines, kata, which I do. I love kata, but I move around freely. Obviously, I love old school arcane weapons, so train with things like that, which you could have to use in the real world, right? So here's a Kusari Fundo, so really old Japanese weapon, but what if you have to use a long chain or something like it in a fight? Little sticks, big sticks, all kinds of things, but could all of that training come to naught in a real-world situation? Absolutely. Lee Murray, an MMA fighter who was also a criminal. In fact, he led the biggest bank heist in history. But anyway, he's a pro MMA fighter. He knocked out Tito Ortiz, UFC champion Tito Ortiz, in a street fight in about 2 seconds. MMA fans joke, if you will, about Tito never being a great striker, but the man has lived in a gym basically his entire life training with top-level people, and again, is a champion-level fighter. So, Lee Murray, a real bad man, but you know what happened to him one time in a street altercation? He got stabbed through the heart. In the instant that blade pierced his heart, all that training that he had done came to naught. Like Ortiz, Uriah Faber, seen up top here over a downed opponent, was a UFC star and a WEC champion. He got in a fight, I think it was in the Philippines. I heard him talk about this in an interview years ago. But this guy wanted to fight him. He beat him up, but all of a sudden he's surrounded by that guy's friends and took a shot from Brass Knuckles. Do you know what he did then? He ran. Wisely. A wiser man, another former UFC fighter and champion, Michael Bisping, got punched on Bourbon Street in New Orleans in front of his family. So there's this crazy guy who walks around sucker punching people. And again, remember, that's in front of his family. Did Michael Bisping destroy this man, which he could have easily done in a fair fight? No. As he said, there could have been a knife, there could have been a gun around, no idea what's happening. He just laughed and walked away. Wise indeed. Remember how his fellow Brit MMA fighter, professional MMA fighter, got stabbed through the heart in a fight. So is martial arts training useless if you don't want to use it even when you've been attacked? Or even if it might not work for you, like in the Murray stabbing? No, let's go back to our swimming analogy. A street fight or being attacked out there in the real world is not like swimming in an Olympic pool. It's like swimming in a wild river full of rapids. Knowing how to swim is definitely going to increase the odds of you walking away from that situation. But here's the point behind this video and the series I want to make. Right or wrong, the great majority of people will never learn how to swim, aka fight. I've been in and around martial arts circles for decades. By far, most people I know do not train. And let's compound the problem by admitting that a lot of martial arts training out there isn't very good. At best, the average person in America anyway took a martial art for a while as a kid. It was the equivalent of playing soccer for a few seasons. And that's definitely better than nothing, but it's not great. I've seen a lot of kids with black belts in my day, a lot. And they're usually terrible. Not their fault, by the way. Most of them are being trained to perform, not fight. So they're actually good at what they're being trained in. And don't get me wrong, I love traditional martial arts. Just look at my channel. I just love practical traditional martial arts. But there's all this kind of new school, modern combative stuff. Krav Maga, I'm taking Krav Maga with my daughter this summer. And this is the home site of the actual gym. I researched, found the gym I wanted to go to. It's worked out. It's really good. And it's also giving me the chance to shake the rust off some of the more sport combative type stuff. So the boxing training, I'm getting back on the mat in their BJJ class. But it's a huge sense of false confidence to think this kind of training makes you quote-unquote prepared. I remember back years ago when I was regularly going to BJJ, when I would wrestle with somebody smaller than me, including like professional fighters, or in one case, a female professional fighter, all of a sudden I was really good. Size and physics matter if you're a little guy like me, or if you're a lady. Don't kid yourself. Someone who outweighs you by 50 pounds, or maybe much more, who has any idea what they're doing in a fight, is going to spell trouble. Quite a challenge, to say the least. So back to my point, most people are not going to go to the trouble of doing the BJJ, the boxing, the Krav Maga, talking about the modern type stuff, or the traditional karate, etc. And because I'm realistic, I almost always have a weapon on me. Saps and blackjacks, because of course I love them and I wrote the book on the subject. But not exclusively, sometimes I carry other things as well, or instead. Because if you are truly having to defend yourself, and you are not holding a force multiplier, you probably messed up somewhere along the way. So think of a weapon as a kind of a flotation device in our swimming analogy. You want that, but anyway, I still don't want to go through those river rapids with a flotation device or without. And feel free to criticize my training, the things I focus on, etc. That's fine. But it's something, and most people have nothing or something from so long ago that they practically have nothing. Step 1 then in successful self-defense is not training, it's not having a weapon, it's what a lot of articles will absolutely correctly start with: avoidance. But I mostly agree with Icy Mike from the Hard to Hurt YouTube channel that 1, that's kind of cliched and obvious, and 2, most of the time, if you do end up in trouble, it's a situation you could not have avoided. I've been sitting at this spot a lot in recent days. It's just the way my schedule has worked out. So I've been working from here, and I thought it was a great place to demonstrate what I want to stress. And what I want to stress is something that the great Liam Neeson stressed in Batman Begins to Christian Bale's budding Batman character. And he said, quote, "Always mind your surroundings," end quote. And that is quite right. If you see something that troubles you up ahead, well, on the street, you turn around, walk away, walk into a store, whatever. But what if trouble comes to you, as it has to me out on the street, while you're just sitting there, standing, whatever, minding your own business? That's the key that I want to focus on. You are already in a location. This isn't so much situational awareness, that's kind of a buzz term in self-defense, but environment awareness. Awareness and planning. Planning that can take just seconds, but really pay dividends if you need it. So I arrive here, we all know the cliched advice about, sit with your back against the wall. Well, there is no wall, and I still want to sit out here. And on this day, it was literally 100 degrees, so I was going to take the one table with an umbrella. Preparedness be damned. It's not the best situated table for defense, but it's the one I'm going to sit in. Now I've got a weapon, a sap. I haven't made a video on this one yet, have I? But before I'd try to use that, I would try to make an exit, and I am seated right next to an exit. With a fence that low, obviously not a big deal, but still, you get the point. I thought about how if I did run out of that exit, I could be running into oncoming traffic, see that, on the right? So if I did go that way, I would immediately turn and run parallel to the flow of traffic. And in the other direction, of course, there are parked cars, which would be good for duck and cover, hiding. You can tell eventually they came out and put up more umbrellas, by the way. And what about these trees? Well, I think if you flung yourself down at the bottom, kind of underneath them, and kicked out at your attacker when they approach, it'd be pretty hard for them to get to you. Or get you out of there. And the other thing is it's a good, or potentially good, hiding spot, right? The shadows, as opposed to, in contrast to the bright sunlight. I still remember dark shadows of bushes saving my friend and I from a severe beating that we were going to receive from a group of older guys. Anyway, you can see there's a nice lamppost here, and below it is a very big block of concrete. If, God forbid, there's shooting, then I want to be plastered down on the ground behind that thing. And now here's the kicker. This is actually what got me going on this video entirely, was looking at this spot, assessing it, again, just very quickly, really, it's not a big deal, but looking for offensive options, not just defensive. Escape obstacles. Okay, but what if you need to more actively defend yourself? Well, that goes back to what I said earlier, that if you're just using your hands, you probably messed up somewhere. Part of messing up might have been not looking for options in the spot that you're going to be hanging out at. And what do we have here? Some of these cinder blocks are already broken. A cinder block is a big, heavy object. I don't think it would make a very good weapon, unless you're a really big, strong dude. But a piece like this? Now we're talking. Light enough to be wielded effectively, even thrown effectively, but heavy enough to do serious damage. And there's more of them just lying around. And the important thing is just imagine how much more quickly you're going to act if all of a sudden, I don't know, a deranged person runs up at you, whatever. But if you already took mental note of those fragments and how useful they could be, and then you can just move on with your day, enjoying yourself, enjoying your drink, whatever. But if something does happen, you're going to very quickly snatch one of those up. Otherwise, you're very unlikely to recognize that there's a great improvised weapon nearby, because you're going to be too busy assessing the incoming threat. Same thing with the defensive options. In either case, you don't want to be spinning around like a blind dog on a meat truck. I'm trying to figure out in the heat of the moment, how can I get out of here? How can I protect myself? And if you have martial arts training, self-defense training, great. You still don't want to test those skills unless you really have to, like we talked about before. And if you don't, back to the video's title, right? If you don't know how to fight, you still want to know how to be able to protect yourself if need be. A completely untrained person or someone who's never even been on any kind of level of fist fight before, holding one of those concrete slabs, well, they are instantly a force to be reckoned with. And anybody can be prepared to quickly turn themselves into that force with a little bit of environmental awareness and planning. Thanks.